Attention. Due to the nature of the films discussed, the Civil Gore Podcast may contain adult language and themes.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Civil Gore Podcast.
Yes, we are back again. One more week, at least. No.
Now I'm starting, we've done enough episodes now, I'm starting to lose track of which episode we're on.
we're because that's the way, that's a little bit of a plus for those Friday the 13th jokes I do. So remember, so this one now is Civil Gore 9. Civil Gore Goes to Hell, the final Civil Gore. But it's really not. Let's hope.
Hopefully that's because we haven't been to space yet.
No, that's right. That will be next episode. Yeah, you know, as Friday the 13th went, nothing was ever truly final. So, yeah. So we'll be going to space next week.
Yeah, and if we get too far up, we'll just reboot.
Mm-hmm. Easy as pie, right? We could just do that
with new hosts.
Yeah,
which will make everybody happy.
Well, Julie and Olivia will take over the helm.
Like, thank God we got those two jackasses off there.
Yeah, I'm getting sick of his dulcet tones and his obnoxious New York mouth, I tell you.
Oh, man. Well, we have got a pretty packed first chop and a pretty packed Blu-ray release schedule this week.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. And you know, after each episode, when one of us talks about stuff, like Tim had mentioned the shorts, so I ended up watching a ton of those shorts off of Shudder. So, I mean, I'll go into that when we do the description. But I think we should let Tim, because he got we both ordered our copies. Mine had a little bit of a tumultuous journey, but it finally came into my possession the day it was intended. But Tim had, and each of us, we got the PSYCHO CIRCUS triple feature. So I didn't get to watch it, but Tim did. So I'll let him go into that right now.
Yeah, this was a great deal. It was less than $7, I believe, from Amazon, and it was the PSYCHO CIRCUS triple feature. It was 3 movies on one disc, so naturally you didn't get any extras or anything, but that's okay.
The extra was the case.
Deal. Yeah, it has a pretty. I tweeted out the menu screen, which is just 3 little mini symbol posters of the movies, which is kind of cool.
It almost looked like a horror version of Let's Make a Deal. You know?
Yeah, that's why I put door number 1, 2, or 3. Very bare bones, but the movies were actually pretty good. So we had The Brotherhood of Satan, 1971, Torture Garden from 1967. This is the one I really wanted because it's an anthology, and it stars Jack Palance and our buddy Burgess Meredith.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that one.
Yep. And then the last one was another great cast, The Creeping Flesh from 1973, starring Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing.
That's a dynamic duo for you, I tell you.
So how can you turn that down?
No, you cannot. Especially for, I think, $6 and something for the 3 of them?
$6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I mean, you couldn't even rent them for that price.
Yeah.
So I had a lazy Saturday this weekend. Really nothing going on but my daughter having a soccer game. So I threw these on and ended up watching all 3 of them. So it was a rare triple feature for me. The first one I watched was The Brotherhood of Satan, and this one was the weakest of the 3 in my opinion. It reminded me, I don't know if you guys have seen the old Mystery Science Theater 3000 classic episode of Manos, The Hands of Fate.
Oh,
which is
right.
It's a really, really terrible movie about this man and wife, and they go off into the countryside with their daughter, and they wind up getting stuck at this house that happens to be inhabited by a bunch of like devil worshippers.
That's always bad luck when you end up
that's basically
house.
This movie is pretty much the exact same plot. It's not quite as bad as Manos Hands of Fate, but you have a man and a woman and their daughter driving out into the countryside, and they get stuck in this town, which similarly is inhabited by a bunch of Satan worshippers, and different things happen where they can't get out of this town or what have you. And so it was pretty dull, and had a few cool scenes here and there, but I'd give this one a pass. Don't buy the set just for this movie. The other 2 are much better. The second one I watched was Torture Garden, and that is the anthology. I really like the opening of this one because it takes place in a sideshow circus carnival setting, which I'm a sucker for.
Oh yes, you still have to come when you take your trip to New York. Eventually, I'll have to take you to Coney Island. They have the sideshow museum there.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's right up my alley, and my brother too.
Oh yeah, you guys will both have to come for that.
But Burgess Meredith plays the. There's an exhibit called Torture Garden, and it is just like a horror sideshow exhibit of different torture implements. And Burgess Meredith plays the host, or I don't want to say ringmaster, it's not a circus, but I guess the host and guide for this exhibit. And so he takes a group of these people through there, and then for some extra money, he offers to show them what's behind the secret curtain. And that's what leads into our anthology as each of these people learns. It's a common anthology trope of each person learning their a possible fate. I've seen this you've seen this in the Tales from the Crypt and the Vault of Horror anthologies,
right.
Somewhat in Dead of Night. But it has 4 stories. One of them's fairly short and has the best use of a killer piano that I've ever seen.
And there's so many uses for a killer piano, so that's a challenge to get the best.
The other 3 stories are good, but they're very, very slow burns, and I think that's what could put some people off. The movie requires a lot of patience because the stories are really, really slow burns. But if you're willing to be patient, it's a decent movie, and Jack Palance is of course great. He's got that shit-eating grin through the whole movie, even when it's not necessary, which is just lovely. I love Jack Palance.
Is he City Slickers Jack Palance?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, he's pretty slick. I don't know if he's a city slicker, but he's pretty slick.
Well, no, because like how he was in that, where he's just like that gruffness, and he's like.
No, he's a little more refined because he's a lot younger in this one.
Oh, okay.
But he's only in one segment, and he's towards the end, so you don't get to see as much as him as I would have liked. But Burgess Meredith is awesome in this, and worth that alone.
That sounds like such a perfect role for him, like this sideshow barker kind of like, because he's got that voice. Yeah,
he hams it up to the T. So that I would recommend that one especially if you're an anthology fan. And then the last one was actually my favorite of the 3, which was The Creeping Flesh. And Peter Cushing's just phenomenal in this one. He plays I guess he's a sort of scientist who, the plot's a little weird. He discovers that evil is more or less like a disease that he thinks he can cure.
That's a cool idea. That's a cool premise.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool premise, and it's got some neat effects in it. It's got some surprising plot developments that I didn't really see coming, where it kind of goes off in different directions. So I really enjoyed that one. Most of all, I just enjoyed Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, because you could have them stand in a room just talking to each other, and I would be enthralled. So
now let me ask you a question. I know this is probably an impossible situation to have in this movie, but does he go, "You may fire when ready"?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay.
But I swear, I don't think Peter Cushing has ever changed.
I don't think he has either. That's why I don't know why people were all upset with that they recreated him in Rogue One, because in all honesty he hasn't changed anyway, so most likely he'd look exactly like that now if he was alive.
Yeah, I mean, this movie was, now granted, this was 1973, so it wasn't that far before Star Wars.
Right, yeah,
but I mean, still, he looks the same. I think he's one of those guys that was just always old.
Yeah.
He just was always old.
Yeah, I feel bad for those people a little bit, because they probably had this career before, but we only know him as like the old person.
Yeah, exactly. Just like Burgess Meredith.
Exactly, and even when he looks young, he looks old. It's like
that's sort of how Jack Palance was. I was like, man, that's a young Jack Palance, but he still looks old.
Yeah, I think it's just the face, or maybe the oldness is ingrained itself into our psyche, and then we just can't look past it.
But anyway, I wouldn't say any of these movies are fantastic must buy, but for $7,
right,
man, you can't beat these 3 movies. They're just, I had not heard of any of them before I saw this, but I thoroughly enjoyed going through those 3 this Saturday. It was a blast.
Yeah, I want to say I think the Creeping Flesh I may have heard of just because of who was in it. So I probably passed it in some kind of article of, Tim and I are both huge Star Wars fans, and I'm always reading stuff about Star Wars, so I wouldn't be surprised if I read about the creeping flesh in some kind of article on Peter Cushing in some form. But for $2 a pop, essentially, is what you're getting. 3 horror movies. I mean, there's certain things that are just no-brainers if you're a horror fan. To me, that's worth the $6 in a heartbeat, even if they all stunk. I mean, at some level.
At least just to see them.
Yeah.
Get your credit, as the coaster nerds would say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you need the 3-movie triple feature credit. Those aren't always easy to get.
So, Brian, you tore through the Shudder shorts.
Yes, I am so glad you pointed that, because I happen to be a big fan of horror shorts, because I think sometimes, especially if you saw David Sandberg, the guy that did Lights Out, his shorts were absolutely phenomenal, and it shows that a good horror director can do so much in a short time. These is not definitely not at all at that caliber of David Sandberg shorts, but I mean some of them were pretty cool. Tim had mentioned a couple of them, so some of them we can both talk to about. But the first one I think is probably, I would say, the most, I guess, mainstream of them was Jack Attack, which I saw I think a comment, I think it was in the Shudder forums, where they said some guy said, "Oh, this would fit perfectly in Tales from Halloween," and if you watch it, you have to agree. That's exactly what could fit into that.
It's even got the same. It's even kind of got the same set design and everything.
It does. And what's good is that the actress Helen Rogers, she was the one in my favorite segment in the original VHS movie, that sick thing that happened to Emily when she was young. I don't know if you remember, that was the one where he was basically, the whole thing is through a Skype session.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
one.
And so she was in that, so she's definitely got some good horror chops there. And that one, I thought Jack Attack was really good. It had a little, it had that like dark horror humor in it, but it was it had some pretty good effects, and it was, it wasn't anything revolutionary by any means, but it was definitely really enjoyable.
Yeah, I love that one. It was I love anything that has the old-fashioned Halloween feel to it.
Right.
Or a traditional Halloween feel. I'm just a sucker for that, and that one had it in spades.
Yeah, it did, and like I think the both actors they had in it, the boy and Helen Rogers did a great job, and it was the perfect amount of campiness, perfect length. I mean, it was just a perfect little thing, and it had that anthology feel to it, because you could totally see it in, even more so Trick or Treat, perhaps. Remember, you could see like when it passes through like one of the houses and they go in to see what's going on, and like that, I could totally see that being in definitely a Tales from Halloween or a Trick or Treat anthology type of film. So, and the next one I saw, this one you had recommended too, which is Lake Nowhere, and to me it kind of gave me this, I guess the best way to describe it was it's like an 80s style supernatural slasher.
Yeah, sort of like you said, kind of Evil Dead meets Friday the 13th.
Right. And it was. I mean, they used pretty much every type of, I guess, horror cliche you could. Tons of nudity going on. People sneaking off to go have sex during a party, one person going out by themselves. It had all the different things, but it was actually really enjoyable. And they had some like retro commercials, I guess, in the beginning too.
Yeah. I mean, it was. There's a lot of these movies that are coming out that they're trying to do the retro 80s thing, but when it's done well, I don't mind.
Right.
And this one was done well.
Yeah, it just had, and they kind of went the little extra mile. Like like that. I mean, there's that one sequence with where they're trying to build up the tension by quickly throwing the cards down in whatever card game they were playing, and they were doing that. And it was and they were going back and forth. And you keep seeing the hands go in. I mean, that totally had one of those like cheesy like pseudo tension build up techniques that they had. But it definitely. I mean, granted, I should hope it holds my interest. It was only I think about 25 minutes long, but it definitely had enough stuff that made it really enjoyable, and the gore wasn't so bad in it. It actually had some decent gore in there. But so that one was a good one. The next one I watched was the Stylist. I don't know, did you see that one at all?
I did not see that one.
That one was it was interesting. It was basically it's sort of like a social commentary done through a horror movie style, where about all the pressures women feel about how their appearances need to be. So it's basically it just stars this hairdresser, and I won't spoil that one to go through it, but it basically just she feels the pressure of not looking good enough, and so she kind of takes matters into her hands. I'll just leave it at that. It's pretty short. I think it's about 10-12 minutes. Moves pretty quick, and it's pretty. The actress in it, the main actress, was pretty good. So, and then I watched Consommé. I guess that's how you say that. I don't know. Did you see that one at all, or?
That one I did not see either yet.
Okay, yeah. So this one was interesting. It's basically a woman. She wakes up and you can tell she's a little bruised and battered, and she starts to relive. Basically, she was attacked the night before. But as the movie goes through, they kind of play back, and it basically turns her. You kind of think, okay, she just was beaten and left somewhere and staggered home, but it's a lot different than what you think, and it actually has a good little twist at the end. And so that one wasn't bad. It was a little weird and kind of nasty at the end, but it was still definitely enjoyable, and it was short enough that it was perfect length for that. And then that one I had to watch just because the name, I like the way you said it, that Beneficia. Like,
I don't know, it sounds like a drug commercial.
It does. It sounds like one of those drug trials from like Pfizer. But yeah, that one was pretty cool too. I thought. It was basically this young girl's prepping for supposedly this mystic rite of passage, which determines her abilities if they're going to be used for good or evil. But it's almost like she's like this teenager that's getting harassed by her parents. It's like whatever the world is, her parents are totally accepting that she's in the middle of this process apparently. But I mean, it was definitely okay. It's definitely unique. I like the concept. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know. What did you think of that one, dude?
It was okay. That one I think was only like 7 or 8 minutes. So.
Yeah, it was again, it was like the perfect length. I don't think I would have been able to.
I think that was the least favorite of the ones I mentioned last week.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was like the concept was cool. But I think it was, yeah. I mean, I think if it was any longer, I probably would have lost interest towards the end of it. But
right,
it was okay. Okay, so the next one I'm gonna go. This one I have been trying not to spoil these, but this one I kind of have to just because. This one was a doozy. It's called. I thought it was called Innsmouth, which makes a lot more sense when I get to the scene I'm talking about. But they actually mention, I guess it's Innsmouth. I guess it's some kind of.
Yeah, that's from the Lovecraft.
Right,
stories.
right. So apparently, I don't know. I have to say I don't know much about the Lovecraft stuff, but I see a lot of people commenting, like bashing this. Because of the way they took it. I guess it was supposedly a reimagining of this, but. So basically, it starts off this detective is kind of investigating this crime. She discovers this dead body there, and it has these like weird egg sacs along the back and this giant bite. So it kind of stumps the I guess the coroner that they come over with. So the detective is definitely intrigued by this, and she wants to investigate this. And the only clue though they have is a picture of the victim. With this and this other attractive woman standing there with the words Innsmouth on it, or Innsmouth. I'll probably butcher that every time I say it, but so anyway, so she goes to investigate this, and where I guess she's looking over this picture and she sees something. I guess it triggers where she thinks this area is. So where the picture was taken. So she goes there, and when she gets there, she kind of eventually gets kind of knocked unconscious and subdued by the woman that was in the photo. Then, she wakes up and she's in this dress, I guess, and the other woman seduces her. So this is where I think it's fun, where I saw a lot of people like saying it was they just did this for gratuitous sake or to make themselves different, but they made it the same. So there's this lesbian scene where they go into the tub and they start making out. The one woman that's I guess the one that was in the picture is completely nude, they start making out in the tub, and I guess the investigator kind of like wakes up from whatever spell she was under for a second and kind of looks at her and is like, what's going on? Then they do this weird shot to the other woman's vagina, and an eyeball pops out, and the girl freaks out. And then you cut up to the woman again, and she's got now fangs, and lunges for her and chews her neck. and then it ends with this kind of the twist where now there's a picture of her, the investigator, with this attractive woman. But what? So I told Tim that I had seen this, and that I'm gonna have, we come up with these funny hashtags. Well, this one I came up with vagiball. There's no other word to describe this. Literally this, and it's a close up shot. I mean, the camera's, I mean, maybe an inch away from just being in there, and so and the funny thing is, I was kind of like shocked by it, and I remember I was watching this right before I went to bed on my iPad, and so I was like, whoa, that's kind of weird. And then my wife,
your vagipad,
yeah, my vagipad, and so my wife Julie comes in, and she was like, what are you watching? I'm like, oh, I'm watching these shorts, and I was like, this one was kind of crazy. I mean, this one ended up with this about a woman that had an eyeball come out of her vagina, and so she said, well, I guess it's better than teeth. Referring to...
Yeah, did you see Teeth?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And I actually own that movie too. That was great, that movie. And so I was so proud of Julie that she had a good reference like that because she'd seen that movie. So
yeah, that was spot on.
Yeah, so it was good time. She was right on that. So yeah, so hashtag vagiball. So Tim, you need to watch this. If not for that, you had me at lesbian bathtub. Yeah, that one. It's pretty erotic. It's. And I think that's what if you look at all the comments, I guess all the true Lovecraft fans were bashing it. They're like, they just did that to exploit this and do this and to show nudity for no reason. But, I mean, based on this version of the story, it made sense. I mean, someone actually said, did I really need to see that close-up of the vagina? It's pretty fun. And I apologize, actually, because I probably mentioned vagina more than we ever will in a one episode of Civil Gore.
We're going to break the record. I'm going to have to use this as a keyword in iTunes.
Yeah, you might have to. So moving on, but that's an interesting one to see. It's definitely, there's a lot of shock value in that one. Now, I watched two more, actually, and then I watched In the Night, where this one I actually really liked. It was kind of cool. It was basically this guy is his first night as I guess he works as one of those guys that transport dead bodies, I guess from the morgue maybe to the hospital or vice versa. I'm not, they don't really go into that, but it's a very simple film. It basically is the one guy, the rookie that just starts. He's talking to the guy that's been around, and he basically tells him the story that kind of freaks him out about a body that they thought was dead, and it really wasn't, and it was back alive. So this freaks him out, and so he basically, I'll just leave it at that. It's very short. It's really watchable, and it's good. I recognize the guy. The guy that stars in it. I know I've seen him before. I'm not sure what he's from, but you'll see him. He's got one of those faces that you've probably seen him. He's probably been in a bunch of different movies. I want to say it was comedies he was in, but you'll recognize him. And it was pretty good. It was just well shot, well done. I thought that one was really good. And this last one I saved because I think, Tim, I don't know if you saw that. Did you see The Stomach?
No, but from your description, I really want to see it.
Yes, and they're making actually a feature film of this, too. And I think, when I watched this, I said, you know what? If Tim didn't see this one, this is one he's got to see. I think he'll really get a kick out of it. So basically, it's about this medium that the way he has his clients talk to their loved ones is through his stomach. So literally, you got to picture this. And the guy is just creepy, and he's just wearing, I guess, a kind of like a pants and no shirt, so I guess he can get his stomach out there. And basically, the people come in and put a stethoscope on and put it up against the stomach, which starts to bulge as they start talking to the loved ones. And he puts this weird tube in his mouth, and he's just kind of like, this guy looks sickly and a little deformed, and it's very uneasy, but which is what makes it so well done. And so the whole movie is just a really uncomfortable feeling, and and it kind of has a little like twistiness to it, of course, but it's just this was one of my favorites just because it actually made me like uncomfortable to watch, but yet I couldn't look away. I was enthralled in it. So to me, that's always a good sign of a good horror movie. If it's, they you kind of want to be sometimes uncomfortable in these horror movies. You want to get that true horror. And so this one was actually really good. And I'm actually now really excited the fact that I saw that they are making a feature to this. So Tim, yeah, you got two you should definitely check out when you get a chance. You could probably watch them both tonight after, and you'll be done in 20 minutes.
So going into our dismemberment for Blu-ray releases April 18th. We have, man, Brian, you need to go out to IMDb and look up the poster for this one.
Oh, the Evelyn one?
Yeah, The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave. 1971 Italian film.
That's one of those vague ones where we don't know what might happen in the movie, right?
Yeah, well, like every Italian horror movie.
Right.
But I love the description. A wealthy pervert lures beautiful young women to his castle so he can have his way with them. And the poster is it's a woman with a skull head, but she's got flesh body, and she's holding a decapitated head.
Oh my God, you're right. I just pulled this up.
It's freaking awesome.
Wait, and the best is the tagline, "The worms are waiting," on the poster.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. It is so cool. So I kind of want to see that one.
I think I may have to look at Amazon and order this. Oh, you know what? It does say Amazon with Prime. It's free. It looks like. Might be free on Amazon
really?
Prime. I may have to watch this.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to watch that one. And another kind of a companion piece to that one is another Italian movie called The Red Queen Kills 7 Times.
Well, I'm glad they gave the amount. You know.
If you want the correct Italian pronunciation, it is La Dama Rossa uccide 7 volte.
Not bad.
That's my Italian.
Not bad with the accent there.
When 2 sisters inherit their family castle, because everybody has to have a family castle.
Yes.
A string of murders committed by a mysterious dark-haired woman in a red cloak decimates their circle of friends. Is the killer their ancestor? The Red Queen, whom legend says claims 7 lives every 100 years?
What is this, like a Jeepers Creepers kind of a thing? Or she
I don't know.
comes at every certain time?
So that one doesn't look quite as interesting. The next one looks really bad. Soldiers of the Damned, 2015. And the reason I say it looks bad is because the summary is "An evil secret awaits."
Really? That's the best they came up with?
The next one on our list is called Arbor Demon. Original title was Enclosure. And out of the premise, kind of sounds cool. It's a woman with a secret from her husband insists the couple go camping to reconnect, but then something in the woods wipes out a group of hunters, and they're basically trapped in their tent. And the cover art for this one looks like that thing you were telling me about, Brian, that makes it look like the zombies are projected on the inside of your tent.
Oh my God, you're right. I just pulled it up as you said that. You're right. That's exactly what it looks like. And the one you see, does it say "Don't breathe" at the top?
Yeah. Don't breathe.
Oh, Jake Busey's in that.
I was just looking at Fiona Dourif. I wonder if she's related to Brad Dourif.
Yeah, it could. And Jake Busey. Maybe it's like one of those ones where there was a movie, I forgot what it was called, but it starred the brothers.
Yeah, she is.
Oh, it is?
She's Brad Dourif's daughter.
That's funny.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, but that reminds me, there was a movie where they had, I forgot, it was where they basically had it was all the brothers of real, like, big people. Like, it was like Tom Hanks's brother.
Oh, really?
Frank Stallone was in, so it was like Jim Hanks, Frank
Clint
Stallone.
Howard.
Yeah, it was cracking me up because I was like, they couldn't get the real guys, so they just grabbed the 3 brothers of these real guys. So it's pretty funny.
I'm gonna skip over the next 2 because they're big, and go right to the last 2. The Crawlers, which is actually the original title was Contamination 0.7, which I think is what the Blu-ray is called.
0.7.
But it was released as The Crawlers. Yeah, 0.7. People from a small town are attacked by evil radioactive tree roots growing in the forest with an impressive 2.4 IMDb score.
That's impressive?
Yeah, so and if you know IMDb scores, 2.4 is bad. Let's just put it that way. That's bad. So I won't be picking that one up. And the last one looks kind of interesting. It's called The Mephisto Waltz from 1971, starring Alan Alda.
That one I've heard of.
Yeah, I've heard of this one. He's a music journalist whose career as a piano player comes to an end when his debut concert receives undeservedly scathing reviews. But what happens is there is a Satanist who arranges to have his soul switched with Alan Alda's character so that he can be young again. I'd like to see this one. This one looks pretty neat.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, and I know I've heard of that movie before. So I never knew what it was about. I actually, just by the name, I never thought it was a horror movie.
Yeah, and it may be more on the thriller side, but IMDb classifies it as horror, so.
Yeah, well, they tend to, I've noticed, like, Shudder has a lot of movies that are basically, a lot of them are more thrillers, but they there's a little horror element to it. They'll keep it, so.
Yeah, it's hard to say where do you draw that line. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I gave up. I really gave up. I used to try and do my movie collections by genre, and that's nearly impossible. Because someone will look at a film and say, that's not horror, that's suspense. So when they brought it out, it's like, okay, suspense and horror. But then they say, well, that's more of a thriller. So where you go, It's like,
yeah, and if we ever go through these releases and you notice I missed one, go check it out on IMDb and see if it uses the genre keyword horror, because typically if it doesn't, I won't include it.
Oh, okay.
Even if it's thriller, I know it's an arbitrary guideline, but I have to use something. Otherwise, I'd be listing all kinds of crazy stuff. So, the big release this week, there's two big releases this week. The first is the Scream Factory special edition of Tales from the Hood.
Oh.
From 1995, which is an anthology.
Yes.
So, you know how we like our anthologies. So, that's on my buy list. Yeah. I'm getting that one.
Yes, and Scream Factory always does a good job, so.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I don't care if you don't even like the movie, if you even have the most passing interest in the movie, their special editions are just phenomenal. I mean, you'll get some level of enjoyment out of it. I don't care what. I've never had one of their special editions disappoint me, just because they're so packed with extras and things.
Right? Yeah, they know their audience with those releases.
I will pick up any of their special editions sight unseen. I don't care if I've never seen the movie or if I'm a huge fan of the movie. I'll pick it up.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's so bad. It's good but bad.
That's probably not a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not good for my wife. Doesn't like that.
Yeah, no, yeah, Julie is not. My wife's not a fan either. She's like, she goes, do you own them? Well, my favorite is when she scans the collection and she sees the movie. Well, two things. One, if she sees it sitting there and it's completely sealed still and not open, or two, where she'll see me a physical representation of my double dipping with. The movie will be side by side with the same movie, just a different edition.
Well, a few weeks back, we talked about how I'm going through my backlog.
Right.
And I am doing that. I'm steadily going through it. I'm working through. There are actually 3 audio commentaries on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Wow.
And I'm going through every single one of them. I vow I will watch every extra and every commentary on every DVD I own.
You need to teach me, Tim, how to do this.
It takes dedication, man. Dedication and a lot of Diablo 3 on the side. Yeah. That's what I do. So the last release we have for this week is a big one, which is Split, which we've talked about. The M. Night Shyamalan vehicle.
I can't wait till this comes back, because I've seen it, but I'm dying to see it again. So
yeah, I definitely want to see it again. It's one of those that I think you'll appreciate more on a second viewing. So,
and it stars. We were just actually talking about her right before the episode. We started the episode. Anya Taylor-Joy, right? Or is it Anna Joy Taylor? Yeah. I always get it backwards.
It's Taylor-Joy.
Taylor-Joy, yes. She's in that, and she was, you might have recognized her from The Witch. So she's got 2 great performances in the world of horror there. So
yeah, and she brings a lot of depth to that role that really any other actress probably wouldn't have brought to it.
Right, and she just has
that could have been played so straight.
Yeah, and she's got she has these sort of blank expressions she can do that kind of, but yet they're blank, but they tell what's going on, and she's very visual with her when she does a performance. So well, I think that's why she was so good in The Witch, because it wasn't like there was a lot of dialogue. Right.
And the dialogue there was Old English, so she had to do a lot of her acting through her face.
Right. And I mean that, yeah, and I and that she just nailed it too. I mean, she was perfect for that movie.
So let's get right into our deep cut, which this week is a favorite of mine, which is It Follows.
Yes.
2014, written by David Robert Mitchell, directed by David Robert Mitchell, starring Micah Monroe, Keira Gilchrist, and Olivia Luccardi?
I think so.
Luccardi?
Yeah, there's some other people in it too, but we don't need to put them on there.
Yeah, fantastic cast.
Yes.
One thing that struck me about this movie, especially when I watched it again, was not only that the cast was relatively unknown, but that they seemed like real people.
They do.
They seem like real kids that you know, if you had happened to live in the same neighborhood, you might have become friends with.
Yeah, I think I'd be in trouble though if I lived next door to Micah Monroe as a kid. I would.
Especially if I had a hedge I could peek over.
Yeah, I'd be totally that kid. I'm not. You know.
But Brian would be the 40-year-old guy peeking over the hedge.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny though because like when you were a kid, when you were like. Yeah, when you're like 16, you see these movies. There's always these sequences where the neighbor is looking out at like it's always in the movies. It's always the hot girl in school is somewhere right by your window, and that it's not that realistic in real life. But but it's like if I were that kid, I'd be totally looking over every time Micah Monroe went in the pool. I mean,
why not?
Yeah, why not is right.
So I may go a little different on this one, Brian, instead of, going scene by scene, because it's really one of those movies you should see for yourself. It's that good, but
yeah.
we'll hit all the big scenes and kind of the broad overtones.
Right, and I don't think it's going to do it justice to go through this scene by scene. I mean, I made my notes that way as if we were, but I tend to have to do that just so I can make sure I don't miss anything that I want to say.
Yeah, the only reason I hesitated to go with that same format for this movie is because it's not one of those movies that, number one, it's fairly dark movie. There's humor, but it's very, very subtle humor. So there's not a lot that you can kind of point to and laugh at and parody in the movie. And then secondly, the movie does such a great job at building suspense and building dread that I think by literally going through every scene, you're kind of taking some of that away.
Right. So
I would hesitate to just like recite it chapter by chapter.
Yeah, in fact, I would say that if you haven't seen it yet, definitely don't listen. I mean, I know when we do be scene by scene, we pretty much spoil the whole movie. But here's one that I would actually not even, if you haven't seen it yet, I would stop it here and watch it and then come back. Even though I have to say with repeat viewings, you notice more and more. And sometimes, like before I watched it for the podcast, I had read a really great article on it, basically saying how the scariest things in this movie you don't even see, based on, and it went into how some of the techniques they used and the little background stuff that were in there. But, so I have to agree though, you could see this movie several times and pick out different nuances each time. And in fact, I had told Tim when I first saw this movie, I didn't get what all the hype was about. I'd heard this thing. Maybe I just went in with a little bit of, be thinking it was going to be so, like when you hype something up, there's always that letdown thing. And I think I let myself get caught up in the hype. So there was a bit of anticipation, to coin a phrase from our good friends over there at Coaster Radio. Ding. And so but so I and I think I remember I was kind of like rushed the watching of it the first time, just kind of stuck it in there between stuff. And so I don't know if I was in the right frame of mind. I had seen it again when it came back on cable, and was saying, why didn't I like this movie the first, or not that I didn't like it, but why wasn't I as impressed as I was with that movie this time? So, and then I've seen it a couple times and then I even so basically every time I watch this thing, I like it more and more. And when we watched it again for the podcast, I watched it on Blu-ray, and like I said, the last couple times were on cable, and I forgot just how beautifully shot this film is and how good it looks in high def on a Blu-ray. So I mean, we'll touch on that a little more, but but if you haven't seen it yet, I would suggest stopping the podcast, watch it, and then come back to it.
Yeah, I had sort of the opposite experience from you. I watched it in the theater maybe the first or second week it was out, and I had heard the hype, so I was expecting it to be good going in, but I really didn't know much about it. And when I came out, I don't know how much Olivia liked it, because it was a little unconventional.
Right.
And so I'm not quite sure. She said she liked it. I just don't know to what degree. But I absolutely loved it. Like, when I came out, I tweeted the director. I tweeted David Robert Mitchell and was like, dude, this movie was awesome. we had a great date night thanks to you.
And that was a Tim tweet, not a Civil Gore tweet at the time.
That was a Tim tweet. He actually liked it.
Oh, nice.
So that was really cool. But obviously the first thing that struck me was the soundtrack, which we'll have to go into later because that's a huge part of this movie.
Yes.
And the other thing that struck me was how original it was, because even though it plays on some very familiar time-worn horror tropes, it does them in a very original way. And the third thing that struck me was just how great the performances were.
Right.
Because the actors in this movie, and I should say that I watched the commentary on the Blu-ray, which is pretty good. It's by a film critic for The Nerdist, that you've probably heard of, the website podcast.
Yeah, I think we follow him on Twitter.
Yeah.
I think I followed them.
So he was a film critic for that, and he ends up bringing in some of his other critic friends for this commentary. And it's a very unconventional commentary because it's not people that worked on the film, which usually you hear all the technical details and what it was like to shoot and the lighting and this and that. Whereas this guy is just giving you his perspective as a horror film critic, what he liked about the movie and what he saw, and it added a lot of depth. I mean, a lot of the stuff he talked about I had already picked up on my own after a couple of viewings, but he really hammered home why this movie stands apart from a lot of other just, generic mainstream horror movies. It really is a very, very smart movie.
Yeah, no, and it was just done like you were saying earlier. It was definitely an underlying commentary on what the It Follows is, but at the same time, it is done in a familiar yet unique way, which just doesn't make sense if you think about it. But when you see it, you'll know what we mean.
Yeah, so let's go through the broad story. So you have a group of kids, and I say kids, but they're really young adults, I would say, because Jay is 19. So you have...
Well, now, how old are they in the film? Are they are they in high school or college?
Jay's in college.
She is, right?
Okay. She's in the film. So they're making that transition from high school to college, that kind of in-between time where they're caught between childhood and adulthood, which is a big, strong running theme throughout this movie. And so Jay is, of course, played by Micah Monroe. And she has a little sister named Lily, who's played by Kelly Height. They
actually kind of look like they could be sisters, I thought.
Yeah, they could probably pass. Yeah. They have kind of a dorky, I really empathized with Paul. The character's name is Paul. He's played by Keira Gilchrist. But I was the Paul when I was growing up. I was kind of the introverted, kind of nerdy, quiet guy, and that's what he plays, and he does it just a phenomenal job with it. In fact, I watched an interview with him after a YouTube video or something, and he's totally different than this character.
Oh, is he?
Which just shows you how good he was. I love it when you expect something out of an actor and then you go and see him in real life and you're going, oh my god, like they were really acting. Like this isn't anything like they really are.
Yeah, I represented him a little bit, because he's got this obvious crush on Jay, Micah Monroe's character. And it's, you almost feel so bad for, because he just watched throughout the movie. You just know he's, and they have a history together, which they mention. I guess when they were young kids or something, I guess they had their first kiss or something. But, and so he's like been just totally pining for her this whole time from when that moment happened. She moved on. She thought of it as exactly what it was, this little harmless thing. But you could tell he's been holding on to that.
Yeah, exactly.
His whole life. And can you blame him? It's Micah Monroe, right?
No. And she's way out of his league.
Yeah.
So. Then we have Olivia Luccardi, who plays Yara, who's one of the most interesting characters in the film. She's not really, it's not a huge role, but it's a very interesting role. She's kind of the dark, deep thinking, intelligent sidekick who's, she's reading literature, and she's got this really cool clamshell e-reader.
Yeah, is that what that is?
Later.
I thought it was a phone at first, but it's an e-reader, just an e-reader?
Yeah, people say it's an e-reader.
Okay.
So these four are growing up in the Detroit suburbs. And what we learn from the very beginning of the movie, there's a young girl named Annie who we see running down the street. in terror. She's running from something, we don't know what. And then we cut to this gruesome scene of her on the beach where she's just been basically mutilated.
Yeah, I mean, her leg is bent the wrong way.
Yeah, her leg is actually broken in the wrong. It's a fantastic shot.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the movie just like starts off and you can't really tell what's going on other than, like you said, she's being chased by something. You have no idea what. She just runs in her house, runs out of her house, runs back in to get her car keys. Yeah, so she's running out, and her father's like, "Hey, what's going on? Everything okay?" Just bolts out of the house. And then she runs to this beach and just sits there and almost does this kind of like this Blair Witch type of like goodbye thing to her parents, and you're like, what is going on? And it kind of gives you the little unnerving feeling because something's going on, but you're not sure what. And then literally it just almost does like a jump cut to that shot of her mangled the next morning.
It's shocking. And one of the small details of that scene, which again shows you how clever this movie is in building the sense of dread, is when Annie runs out of the house. She's got nothing but like a nightgown on and these red high heels, and she's running down the street, and the whole time you're wondering, girl, why don't you take those shoes off? Like, you could run faster. Like, and there's just this tension. And then even on the beach, she's still got these high heels on.
Yeah, I know that and it has to be intentional that she kept those on like that.
Yeah, so I think it's just a way to unnerve you,
right?
Because the whole time it's just one thing to just crawl under your skin. Like, why is she? In horror movies, it's always the same thing. Like, why are you running in those shoes? Like, that's ridiculous. Why are you running through the woods in high heels? Yeah, you're gonna get caught. And I think it's kind of playing on that. Like, it's one more thing to just slightly unnerve you, and it's very subtle, and your mind is subconsciously just aggravated by it, but it works to set that dread, and he does little things like that throughout this movie to keep you off balance.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, just a lot of awkward moments like that, and that's when I had mentioned. I read this article about that. He kind of says that it's like a lot of the things you may not even catch the first viewing of it. Like Tim said, you just know you're unnerved by something. But then with repeat viewings, you start to catch on a little, but maybe might be unnerving you in the scene. But it doesn't take it away at all. It doesn't, now that you figured it out, it doesn't make it any less, easy to watch. It's still unnerving. It's just, it's kind of, you're like, oh, okay, that's why I'm unnerved, but you're still unnerved.
So Jake is dating a guy played by Jake Weary. What's his name, Jeff?
That's the thing. He gives a fake name. It's Hugh. I think he gives it to it first. He says his name is Hugh, and then you find out his name is actually Jeff.
Okay, so she's dating this guy, and they wind up having sex. And after sex, he basically, in a very violent scene, knocks her out, ties her up to a wheelchair, and tells her that he has this thing following him, that he has passed it on to her, and that he is doing this basically to save her life, to prove to her that he's not joking around, this is serious. And she does see this woman, which I believe is topless.
No, I think she's fully nude, this one.
Maybe fully. Oh, that was right.
Yeah, this is the fully nude one.
Kind of walking towards her. And anyway, so he gets her out of the situation, but not before she realizes that there's this thing basically following her. And so the premise of it follows is there is this, whatever you want to call it, ghost, demon, force.
It's definitely not a ghost though, because it can be physically altered.
Right. I mean, they refer to it as it.
Right.
Even the director refers to it as it. It follows.
Yeah.
It's some sort of entity that is passed through sexual contact. And the rules, if you would, of this universe are that if you have sex with somebody that is under this curse, then you will be followed by the entity until it kills you.
It's almost like that Final Destination thing with the order.
Yeah. And after it kills you, it's going to go to the person you had sex with. And then on down the line, back until infinity, I guess.
Right, and then the thing is once you've been infected by this, you could still see it. You could see it following the other person. Because I guess, remember, they both saw it when...
Right, yeah.
Which is an interesting feature. Yeah, I mean, because if you think about it, it's like, that's got to be, even, I mean, as unnerving as this would be if this was a real thing and you were being followed by that, and then you passed it on to somebody and they were followed. It's like, how do you know it's not going to come after you at that point? Who do you know? How do you know it's actually following? I mean, they kind of go into it, but they say it comes straight for you. But still, if you're standing next to this person, are you going to trust that, okay, no, she's, she's the next one?
Right. So basically the movie is Jay, being followed by this thing, convincing her friends that this thing's following her.
Which they don't quite believe at first, I think.
Which, I mean, would you?
No, yeah.
So, because they can't, that's one critical point, Brian. If you're not under the curse, it's invisible. You can't see it.
One of my favorite things about the movie was that they're such a close knit group of friends that they do believe her, and they go, they try and help her, and they find ways to help her by, as you get later on, it's like, they're out watching, so they look at how it reacts to her, and, she'll point where it is in scenes, and they'll go after, kind of just on blind faith that this thing is there and go try and stop it. And, there's a couple of sequences later where they really get creative on how to find it. But I was just gonna go back to when right after they have sex and he puts the chloroform on her mouth. That, if you think about it, talk about unnerving scenes. She's basically reminiscing to him on how she had this. This was like she always dreamed of this as a kid, as growing older and having a boyfriend and walking along. And him in the background, you just hear him go to the trunk, come around. You don't know what he's doing. He comes in with a beer, so you think, oh, he must have got the beer. And next thing you know, he just grabs her, like you said, pretty violently and just shoves the cloth in her mouth. I mean, you couldn't have done two contrasting things, She's all in, like, La La Land, all, like, high on the excitement of, what her childhood, fantasies were, I guess, at some level. And he comes and next thing you know, she's knocked out cold,
Yeah, and I think even the critic on the commentary pointed this out, was the entire movie is very calm. It's shot, it's not fast cuts, it's not fast camera swings. Everything's very slow, very deliberate, not boring, not tedious, but just very slow, very deliberate, very calm, punctuated by these shocking moments of terror and violence. So the way that it's filmed actually makes those moments more effective, because you get lulled into this complacency, which also has an underlying feeling of dread, because you don't know when those shocking moments are going to come.
Right, and in it itself, they call it right out in front of you. They say it's going to come right for you, but it's slow. So you can, like, they basically tell you could literally, if you're smart enough, you could just outrun this thing for the rest of your life without a problem. They say just always make sure you have another exit. Always make sure that that you're kind of paying attention, and and so it's you're right, and so there's this calm throughout it, because even when it sometimes appears, you see it from far off. You're like, okay, I see it coming at me, but it still is creepy as hell in some sequences, because, the fact that the film doesn't change, like, all right, how many horror movies have you seen where you kind of get this build up, okay, something's going to jump out now, the music is swelling up to it, and, things are starting to accelerate, and something's going to jump out at you, or someone's creepy. Here, they don't have that at all. This movie goes on as if it's a regular drama or teen romance story, and these moments of pure horror just are filtered in, and they're done so perfectly that you even though it's like slow moving and peaceful scenes, you're always on edge.
Speaking of being on edge, we kind of alluded to this early on when we were talking about these subtle ways that David Robert Mitchell builds this dread, and one of the big ways is, well, there's actually two big ways that I'd like to talk about. The first is the movie has no set time period. It's almost a dreamlike state in which you cannot pin down when this movie takes place. The first girl that is killed has a cell phone.
Right. So it's somewhat...
it's somewhat modern.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I mentioned that cool little clamshell e-reader that Yara has, which, again, sets the movie in kind of a modern time, but like a modern time not of our world, because that thing doesn't exist.
Right. In fact, I kept calling her Clam Girl through it because I kept forgetting her name.
But
and it's
but
so
isn't
iconic.
that kind of brilliant?
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm going to show you that the character has technology, but it's a technology you don't recognize.
Right.
Which again, is just another way to throw you off. But yes, a lot of the cars are old.
Right, yeah, like the guy Hugh / Jeff, his car is almost like a brand new old car.
Yeah, and you'll see like the suburb they're growing up in is run down and could have been set anywhere from the 60s to the 90s, let's say. The decoration, the furnishings are old fashioned. Is that because they're living with their parents in this kind of rundown, poor community, or is it because this thing's taking place in an earlier time than we thought? It's hard to pin down, and the answer is you can't pin it down because it does have these anachronistic things put in on purpose so that you cannot pin down a time period.
Yeah, and I mean, there's one point where she's lounging in the pool, and she's got one of those old school TVs with the rabbit ear antennas, sitting there, and like almost every time they're watching a movie, I think it's an old black and white movie they're watching, yep. Which is kind of odd. You figure like you see these kids, they're you figure they'd be watching some kind of reality TV show or something. But they're watching these what look to be like old classic black and white, film noir or horror movies or something.
Now, when I first watched this at the theater, I did pick up on that aspect of it, the ambiguous time period. I picked up on that pretty quickly. What I did not pick up on, which I only picked up on the second viewing, was not only can you not pin down the time, you can't pin down the season.
Right. So it flips.
Yeah, you have scenes where Micah's lounging in her pool in a bathing suit, or you have the kids out on the beach. Yet, in the same series of days, they've got winter coats on, everything around them looks like fall.
Right. There's some, even in like the same scene, they'll walk and they go past a house that has leaves all over it. And then they go down the street and it looks like it's in the middle of summer, totally green grass, no leaves falling anywhere. Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't pick that up on the first viewing, but I guarantee you subconsciously I probably picked up on it.
Oh, you must have.
And it unnerved me because it's another way to build dread because your mind is saying something's not quite right here and I just can't put my finger on it.
Right. And another thing, too, if you want to notice with that, which I kind of picked up last night, too, about that, they go on a date, which presumably should be at night the way she applied, and they're at a movie and it's still sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
So
all kinds of things.
Yeah.
At every turn, the movie is subverting your expectations, and it's a really interesting technique, and one that to me requires a lot of talent to pull off because in lesser hands that could just confuse the audience.
Right.
Hey, why are they at bathing suits? Oh, wait, did we just jump forward in time to the fall? But you never get that in this movie. You never feel like you're lost in terms of where the timeline is or where the action's taking place.
Yeah, it just unnerves you in some way, and you just kind of go with it.
And one thing I didn't touch on earlier on when we were talking about the cast is you mentioned, Brian, that these guys have a history. Well, other than the fact that Paul and Jay, we do know through dialogue that they kissed. They had their first kiss. But other than that, you really don't get dialogue saying, oh, remember when we were 5 and you fell off the... They don't have... Nothing is spelled out for you that these people are close. You pick that up intuitively from their performances and their interactions with each other. And like I said, these feel like real kids. And the way they interact, you understand intuitively that they have a shared history probably from childhood.
Right.
And you don't need to be told that.
Right.
It comes through on the screen, and it's ingenious how much information is given to you as a viewer without spelling it out.
Yeah, and just through other like there's obviously, without I don't want to give away. We tried to not give away too much in terms of scene by scene thing, but there's a lot of little hints over there that the father's obviously out of the picture, and I assume he's, you kind of assume he's dead. The mother seems to be drinking in every shot that she's in, and does she actually say a word? Maybe one line, right? I think the
parents are largely the parents are pretty much completely absent in this movie, which is, again, it's another thing that makes the film unnerving, because, and even the critic pointed this out in the commentary, he said, in every horror movie, you would have expected to have the one scene where she runs to her mom doesn't believe her. We go through that whole thing we see in every horror movie where the kids are frustrated because their parents just don't understand. You don't have that in this movie. The parents are just gone. They're not in this.
Right. I mean, the neighbor, his mother plays an interesting role, obviously, but she's in there and she has a line about, oh, that family's messed up. And, and I think, you kind of assume, too, that one of the reasons, kind of go back to why they're so close, I think, is because I think the father was lost when, at least Jay, I assume, I don't know how old the younger sister was, but Jay looked like maybe she was 7 or 8. There was a picture, I guess, of her and her dad, and that's how, he looks in all the shots in there, so I don't think he was ever past that point in her life. So he must have died when she was on the young side. So that could have been, and obviously the mother is still wrecked from it because she's drinking and during the day and the background of shots. And so, you would, and it's funny, I think the kids they seem to always be drinking something in there too. That group of friends. So, I don't know. So they all found each other to cope with the look, because you never hear, obviously Paul and, what's the clam girl's name again?
Yara.
Sorry. Yara, they're just always there. It's like they don't have homes of their own. It seems like whatever trouble they must have had some trouble at their house, that they're always at.
Well, it kind of reminds me of Charlie Brown, where the kids have parents, but they're not integral to the story, so you don't see them.
Right.
And that's refreshing because we don't need to see them.
No need. The fact that they showed her mom in the background a little bit was enough to explain, okay, what situation's going on.
Right. And he didn't have to have a long narrative about it and drag the movie down with all these details that are unnecessary to the plot. You just accept that their parents are not in the picture. And considering the theme of the movie, that's probably a good thing, because that would have taken away from the entire point they were trying to make, which is that these kids are caught between childhood and adulthood, and you can't have adults in there bailing them out, or them having an attempt to bail them out, when the whole movie's theme is them having to figure this out on their own.
Right, and it would have made it, I think, it would have kind of grounded it at some level. The fact that the parents aren't there and they're all kind of on their own, it gives it like that, almost like a surreal situation going on. Because, like you said, you're like, oh, in all these horror movies, there's always that scene where they run to the parents. Well, you don't have that in there. And you kind of like, wow, these kids are pretty much on their own. They got to figure this all out by themselves. And so it's kind of, it is. It's, it's so different from that typical cliche of these type of horror movies.
So let's go into the theories about what it really stands for. On a surface level, it is a supernatural entity that follows these kids around and is passed through sexual transmission.
Right.
If you want to watch it on the bare minimum level, that's what this movie is.
Right. And now it's weird. It's definitely supernatural, but it's some level. There is a physicality to it. It's. Because
right, there's a sequence they throw a towel over it,
right,
and you can see the shape of it under there,
and they shoot it.
They shoot it, which is some great effects when they shoot.
Yeah, and by the way, I know we said we weren't going to go scene by scene, but this scene was one of my favorites just because of that, where she's shooting at this thing, and you're like, oh, for God's sake, she's shooting at this thing. It's obviously, it's a ghost or whatever it is. And then on like the 6th shot, she hits it. And I was like, whoa, you can hit that thing.
Yeah, it's such a good effect, too. I mean, it's the most realistic like looking gunshot.
Yeah, because it kind of goes off its arm, I think, right? It's like,
yeah, it's really, or her neck or something, but it looks real.
Right.
Not that I've seen a lot of people gunshot, but to me, that looks really dark.
Yeah, it was well done. It wasn't like hokey and silly, and it was actually a surprise because, at that point, unless Micah Monroe was training to be a stormtrooper, you figured she would have hit him by then. So I'm just assuming she's just wasting her time shooting.
Right.
And then you get this, whoa. And it was actually a really cool moment.
Now, the second way you can look at this film, which is probably the most obvious metaphor, is STDs.
Yes.
Or sexually transmitted diseases. Okay, so the monster represents a sexually transmitted disease, and if you have sex, you've had sex with every person that person's had sex with, on down the line. I mean, it's a very obvious metaphor.
Right.
And David Robert Mitchell doesn't try to shy away from that. That's obvious. But the movie goes deeper. You can go deeper. It's like Inception. You can keep going deeper.
Oh, yeah.
So, Brian, what do you think the third level is?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
Do you know? I'll put you on the spot.
Hey,
Now, granted, I got this from the commentary, so I kind of cheated.
Yeah. I've had... I don't want to come off sounding silly, so I'll just concede to this one.
Okay, so the third way to look at it is that it represents death. It's inevitable. You can run from it all you want, but it's eventually going to catch up to you.
Oh, that's... now that you say it, I'm like, oh, of course it is.
Yeah. And it's fairly obvious.
Yeah.
It should even be even more obvious than the STD one. But I kind of like that one too, because you don't know what form it's going to take. Right?
Right. Exactly.
Just like it. You don't know what form it's going to take. You don't know when it's going to get you. But you do know it's there. And you can run from it and you can pretend it's not coming. But at some point, it's going to get you. So I kind of like that theory. But there's a fourth theory that I really like in the context of the movie's whole theme, that I think was probably my favorite of the four theories, and that is that it represents adulthood. Because these kids are, again, I say kids, I'm showing my age, these young whippersnappers.
Get off my lawn!
But these young adults are caught between childhood and adulthood. And you see this time again in the movie. You see her when Jay is running from the thing, and she goes to the park and she sits on the swing. She takes a bicycle and rides to the park and sits on a swing like a little kid. Trying to escape into childhood. You see all these sequences, like the kids peering over the pool. That's not just put in for comic effect. That's showing that Jay is now. She used to be one of the kids.
Right.
Now she's the woman. She's the object of desire. So she's starting to grow into that. And how does she handle that transition from childhood to adulthood? And I like the theory that it represents adulthood, because one of the events that we use to mark, our society uses to mark transition to adulthood, is having sex.
Right.
And before that, you're just a kid. After that, now you're an adult. So that it ties in well from that aspect. And again, it's one of those things that you don't know what form it's going to take. It's scary. It's unknown. But you know it's coming, and you can't stop it. And you can try whatever you want to do to recapture your childhood or get back to it. But at some point, it's going to catch up to you. And,
now that you said that, I'm going... It's funny, as you were saying these things, I'm going back to trying different scenes. That makes that scene now where right after she I'll steal from The Big Bang, the post-coitus scene in the car where, she's like, oh, it's so dreamy, as if, when I was a kid, I dreamed of, holding hands with a boy and all that. So, she doesn't have and the fact that now, once the realism hits her like a ton of bricks right after she gets this point that it's not a fantasy, just some holding hand with a boy. There are consequences to now getting to that level. Now that you said that, it's like, it's so funny you could probably seriously watch this movie over and over again. You're right. And just like Inception, keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper and finding all these levels, and they all could be legitimate because that's how well done this movie was.
Yeah, that's why I say it's a very smart movie, because it's there's so many ways you can look at it, and all of them are valid and are borne out by the decisions that the director made. So you can't say that I'm reading into it or I'm reading too much into it, because a lot of these things had to have been deliberate. Like they had to have been. And you could just see it. And in hindsight, once you realize it and it clicks, you see exactly where he did what he did to convey that feeling or that metaphor or whatever.
Right, and I think the just to do that too. I think having the cast be so good definitely was a factor. If you had, I think if you had more known people in it, you would have lost the effect on some of these levels. Because I think the fact that you didn't know, like I didn't hear of Micah Monroe until this movie. I didn't know any of the other people. I didn't recognize anybody.
Yeah, apparently Keira Gilchrist, who played Paul, had been in some stuff before, but I had never heard of him. I'd never seen him.
Yeah, so the fact that you have this clean slate of people really helps, because you kind of, you just gotta learn as they learn through the movie too, which is kind of cool. There's none of these preconceived things like, oh, you don't expect her to do something because you've seen her do it in other movies. I kind of like when they take nobodies at some level. I mean, not that they're nobodies, but sorry, Micah Monroe. Not that they're nobodies, but they're just unknowns in the world of film.
Well, the critic even pointed out. He said, "Look, I grew up in a suburb that looked nothing like this suburb, but yet I can identify with everything they see. I can identify with that old furniture, those old pictures. I can identify with, being around friends that were my friends because I grew up next to them, not because we necessarily were anything alike." And so I think having those unknowns allows you to project yourself onto these characters and kind of have something in common, because they are blank slates that you can identify with. Just like I said, I identified a lot with Paul. If that had been some other actor, I might not can identify with Daniel Radcliffe,
right?
Or, Justin Timberlake, or whoever. But I can identify with this guy because I don't know who he is.
Right, and you explained it much better than I did. I tend to ramble, but you definitely hammered home the point I was trying to make. Yeah, I mean, it definitely helped not to know these people other than from this movie.
So before we wrap up, I did want to talk about the soundtrack a little bit, because the soundtrack's awesome. It's the guy that did it actually composed video game music. They had a little interview with him on the Blu-ray. He started out just doing YouTube music just to get his music out there, and he was picked up by a video game company. He did that for a decade. He did the music for a little independent game called Fez, which I don't know if you've played.
Oh, I heard of it.
Yeah, I played it back in the day when it came out, which was not too long ago actually. But David Robert Mitchell was a big fan of Fez, and so he contacted this guy to do the music and the score for the film. And the guy's name is Rich Vreeland, Vreeland, and he does his music under the code name Disaster Piece.
Oh, right. I saw that listed on there. I wasn't sure if that was the name of the soundtrack itself or just the song.
Yeah, that's the guy's name. That's what he creates his music under.
Okay.
But it's, if you like John Carpenter scores, very synth heavy stuff, you'll love this soundtrack. Has that very retro vibe, and then the scary moments, it kind of goes all over the place. It's really crazy and unnerving, and I can't say too many good things about the score, because it's one of the first things I noticed when I saw the movie in the theater. It's one of the things that really stuck with me even after I walked out of the theater, was how good the score was.
Yeah, I mean, every element to this movie is top notch. I mean, the score is great, and I know I want to touch a little bit also on the cinematography, which is a big. If you look at a lot of reviews to this movie, they say how well it was. There's just the imagery is so well done. And there's a lot of wide screen shots, like a wide lens, I guess they must have used. Because when you say there's a couple of shots down the street where you literally see the whole street, both sides and the road, as if you had a full view of this street. So it's just stuff like that. And there's one shot I want to say in particular that was probably my favorite shot of the movie. It's when they go to I guess Hugh/Jeff's school to find out more about him, because he leaves this fake address, I guess, to her. And if you notice, they basically, I don't even know if you see them walk in. They kind of just cut to the school, and through the window you see what you assume is it walking from a distance, walking towards where they're inside of the school. And this whole time, I think the camera does almost 2 full 360s.
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes around, and every time you come around the window, you see what you think is the it walking closer. It just looks like a regular person, nothing creepy, nothing. But it has the whole characteristics of it, just walking slow, walking straight, right at almost the camera at some level. And then you kind of see them. You finally come. I think I was on the second spin around. You see her and Jay and the neighbor talking to, I guess, some official at the school, some receptionist about this. And then you go out and you fly out, and there's that's one of the really, it's as blown away as I am at the shot and everything. It's definitely one of the most unnerving sequences, because you're like, holy crap, this thing is walking up to them. They don't see it. We see it. And in fact, they don't even let you see it either, because they pan away. It's like,
yeah, that's one of the great parts about that shot is it does a 360 and your mind is expecting it to show it again, and it stops before it gets back to the it. So
I think you see it twice, right? I think you see it twice, and then that third, when you're about to see it again, it stops.
It stops and like unnerves you.
Yeah.
And here's a little trivia for you, Brian. What other movie is Mike? I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm gonna murder his name. Mike Gulakis. Or Gulakis, I don't know if it's a hard G or not. But what other movie did he work on recently? He was cinematographer for.
Was he Get Out?
Nope, Split.
Oh, okay.
He was the cinematographer for Split. He also did a movie called John Dies at the End, which is from 2012. I don't know if you saw that one.
No, I heard a lot of good things about that.
That's a crazy movie. He was the. I don't think he was cinematographer, but he did camera and electrical in that movie. So. But yeah, best known for It Follows and Split.
Yeah, well, I tell you, he's definitely one of my favorites of cinematography right now, because that movie is just. And I tell you, do it justice. Watch it on Blu-ray if you can. Watch it on some sort of high def, or I don't know if there's a 4K version, but I'll tell you, to see this in its full. I'm really regretting I didn't see it in the theater now. Because it must have been
some of
really
those
cool
shots, like the car sequence where she has sex in the car, just the way it's shot with the car out in the middle of this parking lot with that big high-rise derelict building beside it, it almost looks like an iconic shot that years from now you'll see. That'll be the screen grab from the movie that you see when they're writing an article about.
Oh, right, it's always that car. Yeah,
it's always going to be that car in front of that. There's just some shots in here that are just iconic like that.
Oh, one other thing that I want, one other scene, the sequence that, see if you can guess what I'm thinking of. There's a sequence where, it's right after she has sex with the neighbor. The guy, he's cool. I don't think he ever truly believes it. And she's at her window and she looks out and she kind of sees something going on, someone enter the house. What movie does that remind you of, that sequence?
Halloween.
No, see, I thought you might say, but also it reminds me of the original Nightmare on Elm Street, where
yes,
where
that's
she's
actually
Johnny
a better
Depp
comparison.
is it? Remember, and she's banging on the window, and that's what I expected her to do, and I love that this one she just bolts out of the house because she's not held in by anybody. So
right, your example's even better than mine. I was kind of thinking of Jamie Lee Curtis when she's looking out the window. And sees
Michael Myers. Yeah, no, that makes sense too. Yeah, because it had that. There was a lot of similarities actually. I found with Haddonfield in this town a little bit actually at some points too. But immediately when I saw that for the first time, and every time I said that, I think that Nightmare on Elm Street with Nancy seeing Johnny Depp's character across the room.
That's a better example.
Street.
And in fact, the commentary mentions Nightmare on Elm Street a lot.
Oh, does it? Oh, okay.
They make a lot of comparisons between this movie and Nightmare on Elm Street. So. You were spot on with that observation.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. This movie is like, it's so funny talking about it now. I almost want to rewatch it right after we talk about it because it's like, because now I want to like kind of look at the other number 3 and 4 that you gave, what it could represent with the metaphors. And one thing, remember what I was telling you, Brian, before we did this one,
was I had not seen this movie since it came out in the theater.
Oh, right, yeah.
Which was, 3 years ago now?
Yeah, 2014 it came out.
Yeah. So when I sat down to watch this Blu-ray, I was kind of surprised that I remembered every scene vividly. There wasn't a scene... usually, if I haven't seen a movie in a while, I'll put on the Blu-ray and there'll be something that I forgot about, but not in this movie. Every single scene in this movie was crystal clear in my mind from the theatrical release, and it's rare that a movie sticks with me that well over that long.
Yeah, that definitely says something, because I'm the same way as you. It's like, if I haven't seen it in a while, and then you watch it again, you're like, oh, yeah, you fight, you don't, you're like, oh, I don't remember that, I don't remember. But that's really something, if you've seen it so vividly after 3 years. Yeah,
just one time seeing it in the theater, and the critic on I'm sorry I keep going back to the commentary, but there's just so much good information on it that it's... No,
I think I'm going to watch it now. I think I want to watch it with the commentary now that you said that.
Yeah, but he mentions that he says in one part that he's like, I think I could watch this movie over and over and not get tired of it. And I kind of feel the same way. I feel like I could watch it again and again and not... Because there's no scene that drags. There's no scene that you feel like skipping over. Every part of the movie is so well crafted that every scene is integral part of the entire film. And in that respect, I think I could watch it over and over. I immediately watched the movie here for the podcast, and then I immediately went in and started watching the commentary almost back to back.
Yeah, I'll probably watch it again, actually. As soon, my wife, she always seems to come in at the same part of this movie, and it's usually right in the midst of it when they're at the beach. They're all at the beach. They kind of go there to try and, I guess, get away from this thing. I think she always comes in right around there, and she's always like, "Oh, so this thing is real because you could shoot it, right?" And I'm like, well, yeah, but so she always sees that from that point. So I think maybe when get some time in the next couple of days, I'll just sit down and I'll watch it from the beginning with her. So, because now I'm dying to see it again, and with all the new little nuances, just talking about it now.
So I guess we should probably wrap it up because we're about at an hour and a half now.
Yes, and we should now see. We do have a little bit of housekeeping. Yay, housekeeping.
Yeah, we do have some housekeeping
because we got to give the beer pairing and our trivia question, but we should give last week's answer from Creepshow for our trivia question.
Right. So the Creepshow trivia question was, what item is in every story in Creepshow? And the answer to that is the ashtray.
Yes. And like I said, my wife had picked up on that. She's like, hey, isn't that the ashtray from the first sequence? And now, just a little backstory that they went, I read something on this. They went to look for the Father's Day sequence, the opening sequence. They wanted an ashtray that obviously Bedelia uses to smash old Mr. Oh God, what's their names? The family Gransfords?
Nathan,
yeah. Nathan. His head, smash him over the head. I guess they were originally looking for a glass one. But they said, so I guess while filming, right before they're filming, they went to some local area and they found that. And they thought it was so cool. So they decided to use that for the sequence and then loved it so much they decided to put it into every other sequence. And now what I had alluded to the fact that it's not always the item. So what I meant by that is if you look at it, like for example, it's in Billy's room at the end. Actually, it's just on a shelf, and obviously it's not an ashtray in that sequence because unless he's a smoker that we don't know about, wouldn't be an ashtray. It's probably just some kind of cool statue. And in they'll creep up on you. It's a soap dish. So you definitely. So now, guys, watch that movie again and kind of look for it in every sequence. It's kind of funny to see.
All right, what's our beer pairing this week?
Okay, so our beer pairing. This was just a little backstory. When I try and find a beer pairing, I'll try and either take the title of the movie or something iconic for the movie, and Google it with beer next to it to see what I could find. So didn't find much on this, so I decided to just put Follows in there, and I found a beer called As Follows, and it's from Stillwater. Oh, and that's, you know what, I realized that on our show notes I did not put the name of the beer, did I? Oh, no, I did. All right, let me scratch it over. Okay, so the beer pairing I found is As Follows, and it's from a brewery called Stillwater, which I've actually had a couple of them from Stillwater, and I know my wife Julie, she likes one of the IPAs from there. It's a little difficult to find, but you can usually find it at a good craft beer place. Will have it. And
it's not difficult to find down here.
Oh, by you? Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's probably closer to your area. Yeah, but this one in particular is a Belgian strong pale ale. So so you can just imagine now watching It Follows next time, and you can see Micah and her pals drinking a Stillwater as follows. Hopefully this one has better. Is better to them than the it that follows them around. Now I can't promise that this beer, if you drink too much of it, it's not going to lead to some kind of sexual activity, but we'll leave that.
Well, it's guaranteed not to draw demons,
right? Yes, right.
Or whatever this thing is,
unless it's beer demons, but we don't know.
Entities,
right? So we'll give you. Here's a trivia question for this week. Basically, it'll feature our seem to be one of our new favorite mentions on this podcast, Micah Monroe. Before acting, Micah Monroe wanted to pursue this career. What was that career?
That's a good one.
Yeah, and apparently she still does this as an amateur, but apparently what she was planning to do was going to be her career, and I guess her family has some history in it. So I'm sure if you search around enough, you'll find the answer, but try and find it on your own first, try and see if you can think about it. But, and it's funny, when you do get the answer, you could totally see her. She kind of has that vibe, I think, of what this career was,
So we do have some other housekeeping, which is our contact information, and we'd love to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Civil Gore Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Civil Gore Pod. You can write to us at our email address, which is civilgorepodcast@gmail.com. And we'd love for you to write a review for us on iTunes, because that helps us become more visible and get more downloads. And I'm thinking when we hit a certain download milestone that's coming up fairly quickly, we may have a contest.
Yeah, I think we should do that.
To kind of generate some more iTunes reviews and listener feedback. So stay tuned for that as we approach our milestone.
Yes, I'm surprised we're getting there that fast. I'm actually excited about that.
Yep. So we thank you guys for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you back here next week.
Yep. See you guys soon.